Hi everyone. This week we're going to look at lessons 53 through 56. So let's get started. This week you're going to need your lessons manual, the student worksheets, the math card games manual with the game cards, the AL abacus, and the Casio SL450S calculator or another basic calculator. This week we are going to continue to work on subtraction math facts. So let's get started by turning to lesson 53. For the warm-up section, the first paragraph is going to again review the terms for a subtraction equation. The second and third paragraphs are again going to use your worksheet 23, which you used last week and the week before, and you're going to ask questions and discuss the patterns that they are seeing. All right, look down at the section called subtracting one-digit numbers. Here your child is going to write out two subtraction problems, 64 minus 3 and 64 minus 5. Once your child solves those problems, you're going to want to discuss how they are solved. There are some great benefits of having your child explain how they got an answer. It solidifies that process with your child, and you get to see how your child thinks and processes. And that's going to be extremely helpful to you later as your child matures and you're trying to figure out how to help your child learn a concept. There are four methods in which your child might solve the problem 64 minus 5. Let me discuss them briefly with you as it might help your child, especially if they struggled through this math problem. So we're looking at the problem 64 minus 5. One way your child can solve this problem is by taking the 5 from 60 and then adding 4 back in. So they are taking 60 minus 5 and then adding that 4. Another way is that they can take 5 from the 4, but they still have one more. So then they're going to subtract one more. So it'll be taking 5 from the 4, which will take the number down to 60, but they need to subtract one more, which will take it to 59. Then another method is to start with 64 minus 3, which they had already solved. Okay, so they know 64 minus 3 equals 61. They know the difference between 3 and 5, which is their new problem, is 2. So now they're going to take 2 more away from 61. So 61 minus 2 more would be 59. The final way is to use the abacus. Now, I would recommend that you only use the abacus in this instance if your child absolutely needs it to solve a problem. Maybe you have a struggling learner, or maybe your child is still working on visualizing that abacus. What we do want to do, though, is get your child to the place where they can start thinking these strategies and not using the abacus as a crutch. And so sometimes kids start using the abacus as a crutch, and then they don't have to stop and think and figure things through. So if you're finding that's where your child is, pull off on that abacus for problems such as this, but then let them use the abacus more when they're playing math card games. Take a look at the explanation section at the bottom of that first page. It says, counting backwards is the most difficult strategy and should be discouraged. Unfortunately, in the day where we're working with number lines, and maybe your child has had a background with number lines, or sometimes they count backwards with their fingers, well, we're going to want to discourage that. We want them to think a little bit more maturely at this point and think of other strategies that are easier for larger problems down the road. And simply using a number line is not going to be easy when we're dealing with thousands. So help them pull off of that idea and learn new, more mature strategies. Also, take a look at the top of the second page. Here you're going to write the problem 42 minus 8 and have your child solve it. Now, if your child struggles solving this problem, remind them of the strategies you used at the bottom of the first page. Only use the abacus, as I said before, if your child absolutely needs it. Try to have your child think through how to solve the problem prior to using the abacus to solve, even if you just have to talk through the process with them. You will repeat this process again through the next 3 problems, 25 minus 7, 63 minus 2, and 97 minus 8. The game for lesson 53 is subtracting a single-digit number game, and there is not a blog for this game, but it is a fairly easy game to play. If you have questions, you can't figure it out, feel free to call us or email us. We are happy to help you figure out how to play this game. After you finish playing the game, you will give your child worksheet 25. Now, this is a really large worksheet. But for this lesson, you will only complete the first 10 problems. Consider this kind of like a multiple choice worksheet. So you're going to have on the top of the worksheet this list of numbers. These are the only numbers your child can use as the minuend and the subtrahend. The numbers listed down here on the side of the column is the difference. So you're going to need to pick two numbers from the top that when subtracted will equal this number here on the side. Take a look at the explanation section on the right of the instructions for this worksheet. It says, this activity helps the child connect, subtraction, and addition. Also, the form of the equations emphasize the mathematical meaning of the equal sign, that the two sides of an equation must be equal. This worksheet can be difficult for some children. If so, if you find that the case in your home, help your child think about how to solve these problems in a way that they think. One way to think about these problems is to use addition and not thinking of it exclusively in subtraction. Take the difference in the top column and then maybe add it to one of the numbers here on the top and see if you can find the solution up here on the top. For example, if I have 2 plus 21, that equals 23. So we're going to see if we can find 23 up here. Well, it's not up here. So that one won't work. So we're going to try another one. 2 plus 30 equals 32. Well, we have both 30 and 32 here on the top. So we can use 32 minus 30 equals 2. And that one will work. That might help solve other problems as well. If you find that this worksheet though is causing a little bit of frustration, especially for struggling learners, this worksheet might be a particular struggle for them, then I would recommend reducing the number of problems to solve. You can also provide an abacus as a help, or you can work alongside your child. Don't skip this activity, but provide some support so your child does not get overwhelmed. Okay, well, let's go ahead and turn to lesson 54. The first paragraph on the warm-up will review what your child learned in lesson 53, but in the form of a word problem. Read through that word problem 2 times if your child needs that. You can also write the problem on the board or have your child build the equation on the whiteboard. It might help them stay focused on what is being asked and think about how to solve the problem. The next section of the warm-up will again be reviewing the parts of a subtraction problem. The final paragraph will again use worksheet 23, and you will ask questions and discuss the answers with them. Look at the section called Introducing Calculators. The instructions for this lesson will be specific to the Casio SL450S. However, these instructions will work for most basic calculators, just not scientific calculators. You may want to read comments in the explanation section when using the Casio if you have an older model Casio. The directions on how to use the calculator in sections called simply adding and then simply subtracting are pretty straightforward. If you have any questions or problems using the calculator, or if you have a different model, just give us a call or email us. We're here to help you. Take a look at the explanation sections at the top of the second page. It says this: encourage the child to learn about the calculator intuitively. Intuition is a method of learning that is becoming increasingly more important in our technological world. To learn intuitively is to try new procedures by combining common sense with a willingness to take a risk. It implies the hope that what is learned is worth the inevitable frustration. It's really, really easy as a parent to want to help your child find the right keys on the calculator and do the step-by-step instructions for them. I found that I wanted to actually push the buttons for my child. If you find that is you, try to hold yourself back. Your child is going to learn so much better exploring on their own, even or maybe especially when they mess up. So at this point in the lesson, you're going to give your child worksheet 25 to complete. Now that's a lot of problems. If your child looks overwhelmed, or if this was a hard worksheet for them the previous lesson, I do have some suggestions for you. First of all, set a timer and have your child do as many problems as possible during that time frame. Maybe set it for 10 minutes or 5 minutes if you have a struggling learner. Do some of the problems during the lesson and then do more problems later on in the day, or maybe carry it on into another day. Maybe do it on Friday when we don't have an official lesson schedule for that day. Another idea would be to work alongside your child. You can provide even one number and then have your child find the other number. Another suggestion would be to only do specific problems. Maybe pick another 10 to solve instead of all of the rest of them, just pick another 10. But do choose random problems, not 10 problems in a row, so as to challenge your child. And another suggestion would be to do some of the problems and finish the rest of the problems using a calculator. Now, as with the instructions, you're going to want to have your child check all of their problems at the very end of completing the worksheet with their calculator. That is, having them grade their own work and make their own corrections using the calculator. There is not a math card game listed for this lesson. If your child struggled with this activity, you may want to add a subtraction math card game to strengthen up those subtraction math facts. Let's go ahead and turn to lesson 55. If your book was printed in 2019 or before, there is a correction listed in our corrections page. You're going to want to make those changes prior to teaching this lesson. This is a fabulous lesson. I absolutely loved it. If your child struggles with accuracy, you may want to put a sticky note on this lesson and revisit this lesson periodically. You'll want to change up the problems, of course, but review and keep that concept, learning that concept. Take a look at the warm-up section. If your child struggles with the problems listed in the first paragraph, you're going to want to play some math card games, subtraction math card games, to strengthen up those math facts. The next paragraph is a word problem. If your child struggles with that problem, you may want to add the part whole circles, which you're actually going to be using later on in the lesson. By the way, part whole circles are a fabulous tool to help think through and solve word problems. If you're not using them yet when you're working on word problems, definitely use them. The rest of the warm-up will again use worksheet 23. Now, this is the last day you're going to need the worksheet. You're going to again ask questions about the patterns your child sees on that subtraction table. Look at the section called Finding an Error. Here, you're going to write an incorrect part whole circle and see if your child can find the error. I really like doing this on the whiteboard, and then I gave my child a different color marker. They could choose whatever color they wanted to make it more interesting. So I wrote this part whole circle on the whiteboard 3 different times, and then I had my child write the 3 different corrections to it in different colors if they wanted to. On the top of the second page, your child is going to do the same thing with the part whole circles on the top of worksheet 26. So these here. When they find those errors, ask your child how they found those errors. This is going to start a dialogue to help you see how your child is thinking, what strategies they prefer, and it will also reinforce their own learning. On the top of the second page in the explanation section is a diagram of the subtraction problems in part whole circle form. And we're talking about, it shows the minuend, subtrahend, and difference. This may actually be helpful for you or your child. In fact, you may want to have your child write this out and keep it handy. I would always have my child write it out on a sticky note, and she has a spot in front of her desk that she can just plaster any of the notes, and she'll have all kinds of sticky notes, things that will help her remember how to do things. Then you're going to have your child look at the first table on worksheet 26. There are 3 errors to find. If your child struggles in finding them all, you may want to suggest using addition instead of just thinking exclusively in subtraction. So they're going to take the number on the left side of the chart and add it to the number inside the chart. If it is correct, it will give you the number up on the top. For example, so here's the worksheet. If I have 6 plus 5, that equals 11, right? So that should equal this number here on top. It does, so that number, this number here is correct. If I look at 8 plus 8, though, if I come over here, 8 and 8, that equals 16, right? But this is not 16, this is 15. So we know that this number is an error. Have your child do the same thing for table 2. Now this one is a little bit more complicated because your child will see that the entire first row is wrong, and they will think they have found all 3 problems already. Make sure you have them look deeper, as that is not the case. If they do not understand, you may want to say that sometimes the error is not necessarily inside the table, let me show you what I mean, not necessarily in here, but maybe on one of these outside numbers to help guide them towards the direction they need to be subtracting -5 and not -6. Have your child continue working through that worksheet. When your child gets to the multi-digit addition problems, be sure that they do not simply just resolve the problem. They are actually supposed to look for the error, not solve them. Once they find the errors, have them discuss why the problems are wrong. The bottom portion of that worksheet will solve errors that are based completely on place value. Look at the conclusion section in this lesson. I absolutely love the first question in it. It says, who makes errors in math? If your child struggles with confidence or self-esteem, use this question to reassure them, to encourage them. Let them know that you make mistakes, their friends make mistakes, their siblings make mistakes. In math and in everything, nobody is perfect. So use this time to really build them up and really encourage them in this. There is no math card game listed for this lesson. So you're going to want to play a math card game that will review math facts that your child does need to review. It might be addition or it might be subtraction. Let's go ahead and turn to lesson 56. This lesson will practice subtracting from 100. In the second paragraph of the warm-up, you're going to play the comes before game using the multiples of 2. There are sample questions for you to give. What comes before 8? What comes before 12? What comes before 40, etc. After you finish those 2's, though, you are to repeat using multiples of 5. There are no specific questions for you on that section. You will want to come up with them on your own. If that's a struggle for you, let me give you some quick examples. You could use what would come before 20, 35, 50, etc. Now, the third paragraph of the warm-up will review the months of the year. If your child forgot them or is struggling with this section, spend a little bit more time reviewing the months of the year. Take a look at the section called Subtracting from 100 on the abacus, particularly the explanation section to the right of that section. It says, subtracting from 100 is helpful for making change, subtracting some 2-digit numbers, calculating percentages, and finding probabilities. The first thing you're going to want to do is write on the right board 100 minus 37, but you're not going to ask for an answer, but instead ask how to find the answer using the abacus. Now, many times when my child had difficulty thinking with larger numbers, especially in word problems, we would change those numbers up to be much smaller, and that really would help them think through those problems. That's what this next activity is all about. So instead of thinking about what is 100 minus 37, your child is going to think about what is 10 minus 3. We're going to make that large problem smaller, and then have them solve that on the abacus. Once your child understands how to solve the problem using the abacus, have them write it out using the part whole circles. Then they're going to go back to the initial problem, 100 minus 37, and use the same strategies to find the solution. Now, one strategy of this is to actually do the subtraction 100 minus 37, but the other strategy is I need to add what to 37 to equal 100. This will help solidify the relationship between addition and subtraction. You will then write the next 3 problems on the board and have your child solve them the same way. Now, if you have a strong learner in your home, do both methods, addition and subtraction, unless your child gets bored, in which case just move on. If they are able to answer all 3 of those real quick, just do that and then move on. Don't worry about doing both options, both methods. The game for this lesson is Subtracting from 100 game, and there is not a blog for this game, but it is an easy game to play. If you have any questions about how to play it, just call or email us for help. When you play this game, though, you're going to want to use the abacus as needed. There is a comment to the right of that section that says this: repeated practice with the abacus will lead to developing the mental abacus. That is the goal, to get the abacus in your child's mind. The questions in the conclusion section require a little bit of thinking. If your child struggles at all with this, then maybe have your child list the equations for subtraction. So let me just read the question, what they're trying to do. How many equations are there for subtracting from 10? Well, if your child just says 10, then tell them, okay, you know what, let's write them all out. 10 minus 1, 10 minus 2, 10 minus 3, etc. And then find out how many problems there are. And they're going to find out that there are actually 11 problems. Then you're going to want to have them compare the number. So we're subtracting from 10 and we're getting 11. So what's the comparison between those two? And then have them apply what they are finding with the next question. How many questions are there going to be for subtracting from 100? So this is the last lesson before the winter break. We are going to take the next 2 weeks off and then come back after the holidays. The next video will be released on January 3rd. If possible, keep up those math facts. Going 2 weeks or more without working on them will allow your child to forget them. They've worked so hard to get this far. Don't let them forget them. Even if it's just taking a few minutes each day playing a short math card game, that will go a long way in helping your child remember those math facts. If you have any questions or concerns about a lesson, or if your child is struggling with something, give us a call or email us. We are here to help. Have a great few weeks off, and I will see you in the new year.